Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and to members of the committee. Uh, Let me add my voice to those who extend you a warm welcome to the Hall of Administration and to move directly into the remarks that I wish to share with you. They, in many respects, echo the sentiments that have been expressed by my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors. It wasn't too long ago that I sat in the seat that many of you now occupy as a member of the legislature in both houses there, and so I'm hardly unsympathetic to the decisions that you have to make. And the fact of the matter is, the beginning of the crisis that seems to have worsened took hold in 2003, and it has not yet abated. But having said that, it would seem to me that the implications of what's being proposed by way of realignment can be done prudently or it can be done harshly. Our appeal today is to be prudent, to be measured. Specific areas in which I want to focus my remarks are, quite frankly, on the matter of probation. There are subject matter experts here that can speak to this issue with some care, and you will hear more about it from the law enforcement officials of the County of Los Angeles. But I simply want to say that the matter of probation is hugely important for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the quality of life of those probationers and the communities of which they are a part. Not to mention the workforce that is charged with the responsibility for caring for those probationers. This department continues to face significant fiscal and operational challenges, and the matter of realignment as it is currently proposed will only serve to exacerbate those problems, to compound them in a way that is, in my view, simply untenable. If we begin down that path and the assumption of additional responsibilities from the state pursuant to the current proposal, the already $40+ million gap will be made worse. And I hasten to say any shift in responsibility just simply needs to have a permanent, dedicated, and stable revenue source to fully support the program, namely the probation programs, as long as the county is required to retain them. Otherwise, we wreak havoc, simply stated. And I think this is avoidable. The enactment of the California Community Corrections Performance Incentives Act of 2009, otherwise known as SB 678, established a system of performance-based funding to share state savings with counties when these savings are achieved as a result of reduced prison admissions attributable to improved probation outcomes. Well, this county has experienced some fairly significant reductions in numbers of felony probationers sent to prison since the implementation of the program, and simply would ask that we be given the opportunity to demonstrate further successes in this area. Nothing like best practices, nothing like promising practices, and it seems to me that which we've accomplished ought to be taken under consideration prospectively. This may be a better vehicle to reduce costs associated with the adults and the juveniles that are incarcerated and reentering communities. But we need the opportunity to evaluate our efforts and do what can be done, that is, to reduce the negative impacts that could overwhelm this system and produce complexity and complications that only make the quality of life of youth and adult populations much worse in the Department of Probation. And this, along with the fact that there are a number of other outstanding details, warrants, as I think, a more phased-in approach to the realignment proposal. It is not to say that an out-of-hand rejection is in order. It is essentially to say measured, prudent, phased in. The proposal to eliminate the state's Division of Juvenile Justice and transfer the high-risk juveniles and that have committed the most violent crimes and sexual offenses to counties to house, treat, and supervise gives many of us substantial concern. The probation department does not have the facilities, staffing, or long-term treatment plans to place them and to accommodate them in this population. Therefore, the population that we speak of with great care is the youth population. It's extremely difficult to serve them well, as has been evidenced. And so we raise the voice of caution. We raise the voice of prudence. We raise the voice of care so that we don't make matters worse. Assemblyman Chesborough, we've worked on the issues of mental health and all of what that entails. This population is Exhibit A in many respects. And I can tell you what this will in fact mean. We've had these conversations, Assemblyman Lowenthal, Assemblyman Mitchell. We've had these conversations as an expert in child care and care for families. It would seem to me that we have great concern at stake here. They need mental health services. They need health services. And ultimately, they need education and job training. Nothing that is proposed in the realignment will ameliorate those conditions. They will exacerbate them. I just simply think that if we need to remove the unreasonable barriers to those things that drive recidivism, realignment has to be revisited. It could, again, make those things that we wish to make better much worse. May I take the opportunity to say that realignment is conceptually designed to right-size government, if you will, and bring it into proper focus so that we can live within our means, as many are often fond of asserting. And realignment is one such effort that has been put forward to cause us to consider that. Not only that, but the abolishment of redevelopment is another such consideration. And I want to hasten to make this point, contrary to the views of many. You can abolish redevelopment as proposed by the governor, but you know what? You take tools that generate jobs and incentivize the private sector to create a higher quality of life in communities across this state, to remove blight. Now, from my point of view, returning probationers to blighted communities, prolonged blighted communities, is nonsensical. If you want probationers to find jobs, if you want to assuage recidivism, it seems to me that you have to work hand in hand. Now, redevelopment is interesting in terms of tax increments, but I want to pose the question for the legislature. Rather than focusing exclusively on the matter of realignment, raise your voices around tax expenditures, Mr. Chairman. These are the issues, some 40+ billion annually. And as chair of the Senate Budget Committee, as chair of the Assembly's Budget Committee, former, you know the impact of tax expenditures on our state budget and the extent to which local government bears some of the burden pursuant to tax expenditures driving some of this budget crisis. And it seems to me if we're going to have an honest, open, full-minded discussion about how we balance the state's budget, let's put it all on the table. Don't hide the ball. Let's be open, let's be honest, let's be candid. I've been in these budget wars over and over again in the legislature, and until we confront the issue, and those of us at the local level are just looking for a few brave souls to stand up and say, realignment may have its place and its value, but if you really want to help us do it, we need to do, and as many of you all really want to do, and I'm sure of that, put the issue on tax expenditures on the table and ask the governor to forthrightly confront that issue. I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ridley-Thomas. Before I recognize the CEO, I'm going to give a brief response to your question to the legislature, but then say that we have to take that particular question off the table and focus ourselves on realignment. But out of respect to your question, also because I very much like that question, I've always been talking about the $50 billion worth of credits and deductions that are out there and how that side of the ledger we often can't look at. To give you an example, if we could avoid all the cuts in developmental disability if we just eliminated the second home mortgage interest deduction for vacation homes. That would be $750 million.
Right.
There's a number of things like that where there are perverse incentives in our credits and our deductions. But the political reality of today is that that's not on the table. We can't get a two-thirds for that. And we have a proposal before us that the governor has put together, which we have a reasonable chance of getting the two-thirds necessary to get onto the ballot, to have the privilege of having the voters decide whether or not they want to extend for 5 years the implementation of the tax breaks. And that's what we're forced to look at. While I very much appreciate the perspective that you're bringing,
yes.
And I'm not speaking for all of our members here, although I know that a lot of the folks here.
I respect your point of view.
We're trying to take this proposal very seriously. It's a real pathway to getting us out of our financial crisis. The other option, although I might like it personally, is not a realistic political pathway in the short run for getting us there.
I beg to differ, Mr. Chair.
But that's fair.
I just want to say this respectfully. The counties of the state of California could use that $750 million, not only in that perverse incentive that you make reference to, but in Water's Edge, another $750 million, and double weighting another $250 million. It's a whole range of options, and we should simply refuse to allow the discussion to go forward absent putting those issues on the table. If doing so means that you force the question of laying people off, you force the question of shifting the burden to the counties, and I'm not willing to accept that it can't be confronted with the kind of results that we might be able to celebrate and embrace. Don't let those folk off the hook who say that we won't do it. Force them to come to grips with what they're doing in terms of affecting the quality of life of people in this state of California.